Again, welcome to our TK night. We have somebody else joining us here. We're just giving a quick overview of the TK implementation across the state of California. Our TK program, we have currently 22 classrooms. And in each of our classrooms, we have also not just the teacher, but we have an instructional assistant who is there all day long, which gives us a 12-to-1 ratio. Really helpful in a classroom, an early childhood classroom, to have an extra adult in the room. We are really working towards creating an environment for the children that is really based around play and having the children really participate and in learning through their eyes and through their experiences and through the process of what they do and through play. And as one of the things we've been exploring both as a TK teacher group and here on our parent nights is what that looks like. Sometimes people wonder, well, I want to make sure they're prepared. I want to make sure that academically that my child's prepared and ready to go with those language arts skills and the math skills and science skills. And so these nights help us to be able to share really how young children learn most effectively and in a way that really helps them to be the center of their own learning, really, to really be able to take that control and the learning with the support and the guidance of the teachers in the classroom, knowing where they are and how to best set up an environment conducive to that. So we've been very excited as we've been learning this all together and really implementing things within the classroom. So tonight we have with us again, if any of you were here before, Dr. Julie Nicholson. She is really a great resource for us. She not only helps us with these parent nights, but she works with our TK teachers directly too, and provides information, guidance, support, all of those things, resources. Really wonderful support person for all of us. So we're very appreciative. She's got a great background. She's been a preschool teacher, a kindergarten teacher, so she's been in there in the classroom, been working with kids. She's also a mom. She's got 3 kids of her own, and local to the area. So, Palo Alto, San Francisco area. And one of the things that's really special about Dr. Nicholson is that she's not just working with us, but she's working with a lot of school districts, teachers, educators, administrators across the state of California. So really is able to bring that perspective of what's happening across the state. As a matter of fact, she's an author in one of her books, is being used by the state of California to train TK teachers. So we're really thrilled to be able to have Dr. Nicholson with us today. And she's going to be taking us through some learning today about play and creativity and what you can do at home. Hopefully all of you have received a Tinkerbox. If not, please do let me know. You can put it in the chat. If you're able to do that, or you can always email or call me directly. My name's Michelle Harridge. I didn't even introduce myself. I'm a director here at CUSD, and one of the things I'm privileged to do is to work with our TK program. So our Tinker Boxes are something that we provide for every single TK student as they enter in CUSD. You should have received a box that had some Play-Doh in there, some paint, some brushes, a little popsicle stick for using creatively, an apron, all kinds of fun things in there to encourage your child to explore at home with some of these things. So we'll be building off of that, and there may be some opportunity for you to share if you've been able to use those boxes at home as well. So Dr. Nicholson, thank you so much for joining us, and I will pass it over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Harridge. Okay, I'm going to pull out some slides. So give me 1 second here. Okay, everybody should see them now. Is that correct? Do you see them? Okay, very good. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming back or joining for the first time, if it is your first time. I am so happy to be able to do this. I think that there's a lot of exciting things going on in your children's classrooms. And so to be able to talk about that and be able to think about what you're doing, we know that as parents, you are absolutely the most important people in your children's lives, your brain builders. Every interaction they're having with you is so important for building their brains and their futures, right? Um, you are creating the context for them to feel a sense of who they are, their identities, their safety and taking risks to learn. And so, what we're going to talk about tonight, we have, just about 45 minutes or something, is we're going to talk about. I wanted to start by just going over a few ideas that I brought up last time, but we can never hear this too much, just kind of the importance of these early years, how children learn best. I'll go over some key ideas about, you want your children to be successful. We do too in all of those academic areas. And we're going to show you how play is just the best way to do that. It's why your teachers are doing it and how you can do it in the home. So I'll talk a little bit about their brain development and how children learn, how you can think about play, how you can participate in their play. And there's a little spot where I'm going to ask you to think back about your own play a bit and share that if you're interested. And then we're going to go in and I will give several examples of what play might look like at home. And Dr. Harridge will probably do that as well and just chime in throughout. And then, like she shared with you, if there's any observations you've had, whether with the Tinker Box or just something that comes up for you as you hear me talk, feel free to put your ideas in the chat. If you like to share that way, you can send it to me privately and I can share out without naming you, or you can just unmute, raise your hand, unmute, and we can just have you share. This is such a small group, and we do want your voices and your ideas and your feedback to be part of this all throughout. So, okay, so here we go. Let's go to the next one. So I talked about this last time, but I just want to start here because it is really, I mean, childhood is just an amazing time. I think we're in awe of children. We observe them. They're so interesting. They do so many things. They ask so many interesting questions. They're always exploring like little scientists. So we see all of their engagement, their big emotions, the questions they're asking. But what you may or may not know, and I just want us all to hold on to, is that this time in their lives, from birth and then through like the end of the TK year, is the most critical time of a child's brain development. It is the fastest time for the growth of their neurons and the synaptic connections between the neurons. And those are essential for everything that they're going to do, throughout their life. And what we do know from people, we now have so many, I mean, the brain science is just exploding. Here's what we know from current brain science and from, really the last 20 years, is that for children to have optimal neural synaptic development, they need to have consistent caring relationships, number one, but they also have to have opportunities to play and explore their world, and to learn in a way that allows them to touch, to act like scientists, right? To touch, to engage, to explore, to discover in a way where they have a positive kind of stress that is like that stress where they just the kind of stress we all have when we learn things, but not stress that it activates their nervous system into a response that signals that they're under threat. So when we put too much pressure on children to learn in ways that is not how their brain learns, not how their body learns, we can send them there to that place of stress. So we want to optimally support their brain growth, um, and not get them to a place where they are feeling stressed and shut down. And so this is why scientists, trauma therapists, sociologists, I mean, you name it, people have come upon this same conclusion for decades. Of all the different ways that children can be taught information, play-based learning is the one that keeps them in that place that is optimal for their brain growth and for their body and for their social emotional growth. So this is why it's so exciting that Cupertino Unified is dedicated to play-based learning for your children. And we'll talk about how you're probably doing a lot of the things that I'll be talking about. And so that's good too, right? You can just sort of say, keep doing those great things in the home. So I wanted to bring up, this here from the American Academy of Pediatrics. You can see how old this is. Look at this is 2007, but it just goes to show how long we've sort of known about the importance of play. This whole committee from AAP was very concerned about what they were seeing in children's lives. And this was children in the home, in their communities, and in their schools. So again, I just have to say it's astonishing to me how long ago this was, because we still have this challenge. They were seeing that there was more and more pressure being put on children with good intentions because people want them to be successful, but they were pushing down academics and pressure on children and taking and removing play from their lives. Not only play, just opportunities for them to play in their daily lives, in their homes, in their communities, but they were replacing opportunities that were like child-driven play with overscheduling and adult-directed kinds of activities from hour after hour after hour. They were also seeing that play was drying up in classrooms. So when I was a preschool and kindergarten teacher, we were supported to do play-based learning. And then there's been a long period of time where play has been taken away. And now we're realizing the consequences of that and bringing it back. But the AAP said, we want to promote healthy child development. And we also want to promote those strong relationships between children and their families. And there's no better way to do it than play. They put out 3 papers, and they're available. I can share them with you. I want you to know, and it goes through for any of you who like to read the research or just see something from AAP. So it's not just me, talking to you about this. It talks about why it's important and some of the things that get in the way. In fact, their most recent one that they wrote is called The Power of Play, a Pediatric Role in Enhancing Development in Young Children. And it not only talks, this paper, about the benefits of play, but because families feel so much pressure to remove play and to kind of replace it with other things because of the worries about wanting their children to be successful, they thought maybe they can hear the importance of play from teachers, but also from pediatricians, because a lot of families really have connections to pediatricians. And so in this paper, they encourage pediatricians to write prescriptions for play, prescriptions for the families to engage in exactly what we're going to talk about tonight. And so this idea of playful learning is, it's important, and there are lots of places that you can go for resources. I also want to say a lot of things I'll be talking about tonight are reinforced with our national association. And again, this won't be of interest to some of you, but some of you might really want to know that there are, that there's a lot of support and evidence for this. And so the National Association, and maybe you can put this in the chat, Dr. Herridge, the National Association for the Education of Young Children, has a really nice website with some resources for teachers and for families. Okay. So with this, let me see. Oh, I didn't realize this was on and appear. Okay, so I'll have each of these appear. So just some big ideas that, again, this comes out from NAEYC, that national association that I just shared with you. I won't go into depth on these, but just when we think about play and why we're spending time on it, and some sort of just key ideas we want you to know about it, that this the research has shown this is how the children can learn in a lot of ways, but the research shows that they learn things best and they retain information the longest when they do it in a playful way through play. They learn cognitive skills like math and problem solving. You'll see examples of that tonight. Vocabulary, it's critical for supporting physical development, social skills. It's healthy. You're going to see, like I said, it's not just that it supports their brains to develop at this critical time in brain development, but it is so important for their overall health and physical, emotional, cognitive. This one is a big one. I might have mentioned this the last time we were together. I'm not sure. I'm working right now on a book for Harvard Ed, and it is about reducing stress in our schools, preschool to 12th grade. And I'm going to tell you that we're talking about the importance of bringing in playful learning all the way up through high school, and even for those adults. It regulates our nervous system. And for children who often don't have the language yet, to talk about their feelings, and to the way that you might come home and talk to a friend, a girlfriend, a partner, or you write in a journal, or you talk to a therapist, children will play out their feelings. And by playing things out and having ways to release that energy charge, it can reduce their stress. This one is just important just to know that there is so much more than meets the eye. Oftentimes I show a picture of a iceberg, and we think about what's above the water as play is fun, when in fact there's so much of the iceberg under the water, how it supports children to across the domains, social, emotional, physical, cognitive, also all of the subject areas. You're going to see that tonight: language, literacy, social studies, history, math, science, and then all of those dispositions that are so important for children to learn. Things like persistence, curiosity, risk taking, those kinds of things. And then really, really important skills when we look at what is the most predictive of children's later academics in elementary school, 3rd grade and beyond. One of the most important things is self-regulation, children's ability to control their emotions and their behavior. And they learn that best through play. So more than meets the eye. This is an important point here, that one of the things that AAP paper talks about is that there's so many things that get in the way of play, that create barriers for play, not only in school, but in homes. And I have a lot of empathy for that. There's a lot of demands on families today. There's a lot you have to juggle. And I'm the mother of 3. I still have 2 living at home with me. There's just a lot. So I do want to just acknowledge that this isn't easy. But what I will say is that in today's world, where we're trying to push play out, it's going to be important for you to just notice that there's a lot that gets in the way, and to say, I have to be intentional about making time. And your teachers are having to do the same thing. I'm talking to the teachers about, I know you have all of these demands on you, and because this is best for children, we're gonna figure out how to balance that, but we want to hold on to it. Myth is that there's play and then there's learning, and we're unlearning this as is not true. Play is learning. Play is an instructional strategy for teachers, and play is a wonderful way for you to learn with your child. So we just have to listen for those myths that we've heard about, play versus learning, and say play is exactly what supports learning. Playing outside is so important. You want to take your children out in all kinds of weather. There's so much, and those natural materials, we'll talk about open-ended materials, but oh my goodness, sticks and mud and leaves and sand and water. It's so rich for learning. So gosh, a lot you could do there. I'm not going to say a lot about this, but just that, for many years, almost a decade, I ran the Center for Research on Play. There is so much depth of what we can learn and study, and the empirical base is just deep and wide. Well, I'll talk about this a little later, but trust your own playful instincts. And, you'll find that we don't have time to play too. And so sometimes it gives you an excuse to recapture the joy that you experience through play when you play with your children. Find time. And I've said a lot about that. Play is the context for children's learning. So with these ideas in hand and just kind of holding on to them, can I invite you to just think about a childhood memory of your play? Something that just comes to mind, something, maybe a happy memory of play. And just think about that for a moment. What was, what was it, that a type of play that you like to do? Were you with somebody else, or did you tend to like to play by yourself? I want you to think about, with this memory, what materials were you using? And where were you? Were you indoors or outdoors, or what do you remember about where it happened? I want you to think about the role of adults. Is there an adult in your play or not? And any risk. Was there risk taking when you think about the aspect of your play? Was there any risk taking? And any emotions that you associate with that play memory? And if anybody is brave enough, we'd love to hear you share your play memory. And if not, you can share in the chat any of these aspects. If you want to just, answer one of these questions, or type the answer to, a bunch of them, we'd love to see that. And maybe while we're inviting you to share, I don't know, Dr. Harridge, if you want to say anything about a play memory that comes to mind for you.
Sure, I'd love to. So, as you were going through the list of questions, I was like playing almost like a video in my mind of different experiences throughout my childhood. And a few of them came to mind. And I'm going to admit that none of them involved adults. I didn't think of it ahead of time, but I was scrolling through as you started talking, and none of them actually involved adults. But I had some memories of actually physical play. Like when I was very young, some of my earliest memories of play, we had some like very large homemade beanbag type things that were actually bigger than a beanbag, and we were so little at that time, we could kind of jump on it and play. And I learned a lot about bumping heads and how to be safe, and we giggled and had a lot of fun. And then as I kept scrolling these memories through my mind, there was a lot of make-believe play that I really, really enjoyed as a kid. One was a friend of mine had an outdoor playhouse. And so we had materials in there. Some of them were things that we just kind of brought in. They were whatever we found in the yard. And then other ones had to do with like baby dolls, and we were make-believing who was the parent and who was the child, and what that meant, and who got to hold the baby and how old the baby was, and all of those things. So those are the types of things that went through my mind as you were asking these questions.
I love it. Thanks for sharing. Uma, thank you for sharing. You said outdoor hide and seek playing. sand play, and jumping from the stairs. So there was a little risk in there. There's some outdoor play. I love it. And some games. Is there anybody else who's with us who would like to unmute and share or add something to the chat box? I used to play alone, said Vivian. I used to play with Barbies, and that was my pretend play. Yeah, for hours and hours, I bet you had like dialogues and you maybe went on adventures, and Barbie probably had some of the same problems in your life, and you had her manage those. So beautiful. Well, you feel free to keep adding here. Um, I do want to say that it's very helpful, even if you don't want to share tonight, for you to reflect on this. It helps us think about and go back to, when did I feel joyful? When did I feel happy in my play as a young child? It helps, and I've found, because I've done this with thousands of people, different audiences, that and while I do want to recognize that not everybody had the opportunity to play, there are different circumstances that prevented that in childhood. So I always, acknowledge that for most people, that there's opportunities you can think back to, not only these memories and these kind of qualities that were shared, but that they evoke certain emotions of freedom, of joy, of happiness, of feeling self-confidence, right? Of feeling safe, a sense of belonging and connection. And so I want to say, from all the research on play memories from around the world, there are certain characteristics that come up over and over and over as representing people's most meaningful memories. And if we're going to hold on to these for the rest of our lives, right, for decades, there's something that's touching your heart and soul about this. And so we want to pay attention to those qualities. And maybe you could add them in the chat, Dr. Herridge. So these are the qualities. So the first one is that children often they make it's their choice. They have autonomy and agency to choose the play. It comes from them, not an adult telling them how to play, but they have some choice. Another one is that our memories tend to be outdoors. That came up, didn't it? Probably for several of you. I know for a few examples. So we want to remember I said it's important to be playing outdoors, not just indoors. And so people have their most, some of the most positive and important memories of their lives are outdoors. A third, and this is a really important one because we take this away from children, not just as parents, but as teachers. It involves risk. And that's why I asked you if there was any risk in your play. And it sounds like for some of you, there was. We're so nervous about children's success, or in the case of schools' lawsuits, right, that we've almost de-risked or taken risk out of children's lives. But children need risk in order to learn how to believe in themselves, and to develop all the dispositions that I talked about are underneath the water, underneath that iceberg. They need to be able to take risks. When we're controlling every aspect of what they do, they can't take risks. And then the final feature is that it often it's relational. So either with a friend or with a pet or a favored doll like a Barbie, right? But there's a relational component to it. So we want to create those aspects in our play in the home as well as school. And let me just go on to the next slide here that talk about these elements of play that really will set your child up for a rich experience. So building on, we've sort of begun to get a sense of what that looks like. And so you see this list here goes over some of the things that I've talked about. So children, you want to give children autonomy and allow them to make some of their own decisions so they experience that sense of freedom in their play. So we'll remember that when we talk about the different kinds of play. The impulse to play is going to come from children naturally. They are so motivated to play. This is how they learn to understand the world. And you will find that when you create that space for children to have autonomy and to play, that sometimes they just get so kind of in the zone, they're so in the flow that they will want to stay doing it even more than eating, definitely more than going to sleep, right? um, but the more that we give them an opportunity to embed, to get so engrossed in their play like that, the better. And that happens more often than not with open-ended materials. I talked about open-ended materials in nature, but we're going to talk about what that looks like in the house. Um, Children, when we want to help them be immersed in the moment, like I talked about, we want play that is not scripted. So there's that. I'll talk about like what your role is, but we do want to support children's spontaneity and play, because that's where the fun, the flexibility, the creativity, the joy, the discovery comes from. And of course, if children, I might have mentioned this last time, if we do things that are too adult directed, and try to control children's experience in play-based activities, they'll do it and they might enjoy it, but they're going to call that work. Children are really savvy. They will say, no, no, my teacher or, my mom wants me to do this, and that's fun, but that's not play, right? Children have to feel that sense that they are in charge of, and it comes from their own interest, their own intrinsic motivation for them to really associate it with play. Okay. So it should be really enjoyable. You don't want children to struggle, feel stress, feel like, we what that looks like. When they're experiencing that, we've sort of lost the touch of playful learning. And so towards that end, I just wanted to show you this continuum because um when we think about play, we want to think about this whole continuum. And so free play is the child-led play where the child is in charge and they're choosing the materials, they're sort of doing it based on their own interests. And maybe you're observing them, you might ask an open-ended question, but really it's being driven by them. The sweet spot, what we've found for children's learning and development in the classroom and at home, is this thing called guided play. So I'll give you some examples of what that looks like, but you're supporting children to have access to materials. It's led by them and their interests, but you're observing them very closely to think about how you might just extend it just a little bit to support a certain skill or a certain, experience. There's certainly games. And then there is this adult directed and planned experience. One of the things that I love this quote that people have talked about, they say, be careful about direct instruction being chocolate covered broccoli. Now, I love chocolate and I love broccoli, right? But I will say, you get the idea that it's kind of disguised as play, but it's us trying to direct a child towards a certain goal, for our desire. Okay, so the sweet spot is this guided play. That's where we want to spend most of our time. So let's look here. We'll get into some examples. Okay. I do have this slide before we go into some examples. Okay, I want to make sure. Yes. Okay. So when we think about your role in the play, here's a couple things just to think about. So we talked about the importance of, well, let me actually say this up front. In research that has looked at how supporting parents in the home to play with their children, and I want you to sort of think about, does this resonate with you? It may or may not. What we found in the research is that parents often, they value play. They know it's important for their children's development, especially cognitively. That's what parents often think. They recognize that it's how children learn about the world around them, but they don't always feel confident in their own abilities to play. It's been a long time since they play, and they don't always feel comfortable knowing how to engage that way, or they feel silly, or they're not quite sure how to engage in that. And so I do want to just name that it might in the beginning feel like you're stepping out of your comfort zone a little bit. And for others, it's very comfortable and you're very playful and it's natural. But if it's not, I want to just validate that you're not alone. A lot of people feel that. And it's like a learned skill to feel comfortable. In a lot of ways, it might be cultural. People grew up in a context where adults allowed children to play, but they never entered or were part of the play, and that's a cultural difference. And so I just want to recognize that, again, this might be a learning edge for you. Okay, so you want to support their autonomy. You want to go at their pace. And I wrote down here, take time to just watch and listen, just observe. You're going to notice what they're interested in before you dive in, before you jump in and say anything. You want to just kind of notice how children are playing with materials, and see, what questions if they're lining up, let's say, toy dinosaurs by size, oh, that's so interesting. You're learning what they're interested in and how they're putting things in order. But you don't want to join their play right away with your words or actions. It's probably the biggest step for the teachers to learn, and I would say probably for the parents to learn, is not to jump in and start to direct the play. Because it can really quickly go from that child-free play or the guided play to your directed play. So imagine you have a child who's building a ramp with some blocks in your home. This could be you have some blocks, the child is building a ramp, and they've got a toy car. And so you have a parent sitting by, maybe you're folding some laundry or doing a little something, and the child is struggling to figure out how to maybe make the car go faster or make the ramp work, and they call out, "Mom, Dad, Auntie, come." And here's where we can sort of notice that idea of supporting their autonomy. So instead of jumping in and kind of saying, well, let's try this or let's do this, you might just notice and kind of reflect back to them what they started. Oh, I saw that you built the ramp and you put the block there. And what did you notice? What happened? Right? Asking them to start to tell you kind of what they're exploring and to use language to describe, oh, okay, you maybe we need to put a block a little, we need to make it a little steeper. Let's work on that together. But asking them what's going on, and asking them some open-ended questions is really important and really helpful. We have a lot of people just joining us now. I'm noticing that. So saying what you see is really important. Giving your child specific feedback about what you see them doing. So let's say that you notice they discovered something about what water does. And so you can just use very specific language like, wow, look at how the water made the wheel turn. You're narrating what they're discovering in their play. And as you're narrating, you're helping them put words and concepts and language and vocabulary to what is happening in the play. So this is a way where you can get involved in supporting your child, but supporting their autonomy, just narrating what you see them doing. Oh, you're putting another block on top. Oh, look, the ball went down the ramp. Right? That can be, do you want to add anything, Dr. Herridge, I see you nodding along.
No, I was just, as you were describing those, I was thinking of some interactions that I've had both with my children or my niece and with the children in the classroom as well, where a lot of times they'll get started on play and invite you in. And and that's again at their pace and with their on their agenda. And so they'll invite you in to participate. And it can oftentimes be easy to almost overtake that if you're not careful. And so, as you were saying those things, that was the nodding is yes, it's, that reminder to take that step back and have them be the leader in that play.
Exactly. And to learn the kind of questions that you can ask that are open-ended and help move them, let's say, to the next step of their thinking and their learning. So some examples um, of those kinds of questions you might have. What happened when you tried, you know, or thinking out loud? Instead of solving something for them, well, we already know that the ball goes down the ramp this way. So maybe we could try it this other way, right? Reflecting back or drawing their attention to certain things like, I wonder how this compares to this, right? So you're kind of creating these open-ended questions for children. And then I put this here, this play and learning alongside with children. Oh, I forgot to say, I wanted to mention just objects and the importance of thinking about quality materials over quantity of materials. Really important to use open-ended objects that children can use in lots of different ways. We call them loose parts. We have lots of loose parts around the house, but objects and play materials, scarves, buttons, coins, you name it, that children can use in lots of different ways that don't have one right answer. I mean, sometimes there's one right answer. Sometimes a child wants to solve a puzzle, and that's fine. And there's ways that I'll talk about how we can support them in doing that. But if everything has one right answer, we're not inviting them to explore and imagine and discover and be creative alongside. So the more open-ended our materials can be, the better. Paper, crayons, different kinds of animals that we can, that they can play with in open-ended ways, imaginary ways are so important. And then I put here the play and learn alongside your child. Again, this might be a learning edge, but you're going to find that if they're squishing Play-Doh and you start squishing Play-Doh, and we'll go to that example next, we'll really do a deep dive on Play-Doh. You're gonna, first of all, it's all those things we said that help children. It's a stress reducer. It helps connect us, right? And builds relationship. It helps us, connect to our interests. You're gonna find that it does all of that for you as well. Every time I do a training, and I do trainings with superintendents and state agency leaders and our policymakers and teachers all over, if we put Play-Doh out, I'm going to tell you, people just come alive. It's like the little kid in them comes out and they're like, why do we not have this more often at our meetings? It relaxes me. It helps me think. I can make better decisions, right? The conversation flows. So play and learn alongside your child. Okay, so let's do a deep dive. Let's kind of think about classic, some examples of things you can do in your house. And I'm going to try to just talk about what it might look like to support play and learning in the house, and some of the ways that we can make visible what children are learning out of those things, so that you see that play versus learning is a dichotomy that's not accurate. So Play-Doh, and here's one recipe. There's lots of them, but this is a simple recipe. I encourage you, if you write the recipe down and use it and make it with your child, because they can learn that recipe. They can measure, they can pour, they can count, they can learn read some by looking at the recipe. It says mix water, they sort of look at something, there's meaning to that, reading those words. But also look at all this list of different items you can gather for children to use in their play with the Play-Doh. These are all things that, the kinds of things that you would have around the house. But here's what I want to say. I want to go through, and I'm going to give you just an example when we think about the kinds of things that children are learning just engaging in play with Play-Doh. And if you're sitting with them, or a sibling or a neighbor or a cousin is sitting with them, all the better, because of all that social interaction. Okay, so let's imagine there's Play-Doh on the table, there's some items, and the children, your child is playing. So first of all, let's think about social emotional development. When they're creating with Play-Doh, they're feeling competent. I'm really good at this. I'm good at rolling the dough. I can, look, I made a dog, right? Isn't that kind of thing will come up. They're pounding, they're flattening, they're squeezing. These are really important outlets for children's energy, especially big emotions. If they're really activated, their stress response system, there's nothing more powerful than giving them some Play-Doh to play with. When children, often when they're playing in classrooms, and you can do this at home, when they're playing with Play-Doh, they can narrate a story. They like to do this. They tell you stories of what's happening and the characters they're creating and the adventures, especially the age of your children. And you can ask them, this is a great place for asking them questions, open-ended questions to describe and think about what they're doing. You know, what does that do that you just made? Or what, connecting the play to the real world, you can help them do. And talking about, well, they made a green tomato. Can you make a red tomato? You know, kind of labeling things. You can teach cooperation, you know, talking about, I can help you make that car, right? And you can observe and make sort of comparisons. Well, you're rolling the dough. Look, I'm rolling the dough too, right? And sort of bringing attention to some of those kinds of interactions that contribute to development of learning and social skills and emotional skills. Let's think about creativity and imagination. So they're going to create so many make-believe things. And again, having them narrate stories about the little creatures or characters is really helpful. But also, and I think I talked about this last time, when children take Play-Doh and they make it into an object, they are often developing their symbolic thinking that they need for language and literacy. So if they take something, you know, a piece of Play-Doh, and they are pretending that it is a telephone, or they're pretending they make a box looking thing and say, that's our TV, right? They're developing that abstract thinking that is going to support them to learn letters and numbers and to be able to think about abstract concepts. And we really want to support them in doing that. But you're going to see, they're going to imagine themselves as being construction workers, as being hunters, as being chefs, as going on, you know, America's Got Talent. They're going to do all sorts of things. And if you can talk to them about telling and help them tell stories about what they're doing, and even introduce new vocabulary to name some of the stories they're doing, that is really, really powerful. You'll see you can bring in ideas and language from the books that they're reading at home. They'll do that naturally, but you can also do that. It's a beautiful thing to do. In science, they're having that, I mean, there's so much discovery that children can have as they're experimenting and exploring, but you could even support that. Here's an example of guided play. You have regular Play-Doh, and then maybe introduce some sand into the red Play-Doh has no sand. The yellow Play-Doh ball, put a little sand in it, and you start exploring that. And you can introduce, you know, words like texture, you know, and some different kinds of language about grainy or smooth or lumpy, right? And you give them some language to talk about that. For math, they could certainly, they're making, like I said, making the Play-Doh, there's measurement, there's counting. It's really cooking with your children is a beautiful way to have them play with you and support the play through the learning through play. And here's what I do want to say, this poking, rolling, squishing the Play-Doh, this is developing not just eye-hand coordination, which is really important for them to be able to read, but it is developing the hand, the muscles in their hands that they need to be able to hold a pencil and to write. So when we see struggles with first grade and beyond, where children are struggling to hold a pencil, if you work with an occupational therapist, this is one of the first things they'll do is having children squish with Play-Doh and goop and things like that. It's a powerful learning tool, just something this simple. Children they don't grow tired of it. You can add, different things like lavender, different smells and different colors. And again, all of those different kinds of tools to use. And you can write down some of the stories they come up with, take pictures and have them dictate stories to you. Do you want to add anything, Dr. Harridge? I mean, Play-Doh is just absolutely amazing.
It really is. And one of the things I was thinking of while you were talking also is sometimes when we think of the play items that we have at home, sometimes let's take, say, a play kitchen set, for example, where we have a predetermined type of activity space, which is really fun, and the children absolutely love it. And there's little plastic food and everything like that. So much fun. But in addition to that, you can take something like Play-Doh that is so versatile. They can make their own food. They can create and use that abstract thought that Dr. Nicholson was talking about. It. I wonder what they might make with it, rather than just using the pre-done chocolate-covered broccoli, as you
Yeah.
mentioned.
Yeah.
But those types of things where really it allows them to explore and be creative and think of how one object can represent something else. So when I think of Play-Doh or other play objects, just how versatile it can be and how it really opens up a child's imagination and exploration. And it's okay if they don't have those play items that are predetermined. Those aren't necessary. They're fun and they're wonderful, but there are also things like even using leftover items that you have around the house to incorporate into making patterns on top of the Play-Doh, or all sorts of fun things to do.
For sure. So we have just a few minutes. I want to just say a little bit about this imaginary play and how, so here's Alicia. She loves to dress up. She loves to dress up in her parents' clothes. She loves to wear jewelry, put shoes on, pretend to go shopping. Probably this resonates with some of your play memories. Maybe you did something similar. She loves to play with she loves to cook dinner for her baby dolls. So you see this kind of a play going on, and playing along with her, that guided play that allows her to be in charge so that she has that intrinsic motivation, but how you might extend her play and even collaborate in her play. Maybe you ask her what she's baking and she says, well, I don't know. And you brainstorm together which kind of cookies she wants to bake, or what she chooses something she wants to bake. And you say, well, I wonder if we should get, maybe you have some paper and pencils or crayons nearby. And she can either write if she's at that place, draw, or pretend to write a grocery list for you. And so you can begin to think about, if we're going to go shopping for baking these favorite cookies, what do we need? Or you could even just pretend to write that down yourself. But it supports the child to think about a functional use of literacy. You can encourage her to count how many items she has on her list. And then you can help her, if things get a little bit mixed up as she's counting, you can go, oh, let's count together. So there's that scaffolding and that support. And you can think about asking her, as she goes through and she's narrating what comes next in the recipe. And you can cook for, oh, well, what else do we need to do? We need to set up the table to serve the cookies. Oh, who else is coming to the party? Just kind of asking that open-ended question that allows her, Alicia, to drive the play, but you're there to support and to be thinking about, how am I supporting language development? How am I supporting natural uses of writing that's motivating, or natural uses of counting and numbers? And by the way, they just love having you there to play with them too, right? They're going to get in that place of engagement and feel just fully engaged, and that's the point at which that they are learning so very much. So the last thing in our, we just have one more minute here, but this I wanted to just mention because it really relates to what did you call, you called them the tinker boxes that went home with you. And I love that idea because you can set up tinker box. You have a tinker box, and have sometimes called them learning bins. I used to do this all the time for my girls. I'll give you just a couple of examples, but and you would want to do this based on what your children are interested in, right? But I had like that you might have a bin that is set up with some blocks in it if you have some blocks at home. But in the little bin that's easy to just pull out, you would also have some paper, some pens or crayons, or some pencils. And so when the child builds something, either alone or with you, you can encourage them. Like, can we make some signs? If they built a museum, oh, well, let's put a sign that says what the hours are to come to the museum. Now they're practicing some numbers in a meaningful way, right? Or you have a name of the restaurant and they can go ahead and add that. Pretend play, you can add a bin where, just like for Alicia, where you add clothes, dresses, shirts, jackets, hats, bags, jewelry, right? Whatever is in there. And but you could also change that. So maybe it's an office play bin, right? They know that you go to your office, they've been to your office with you, and they want to set up their own office so they can help contribute to what things go in that bin. They can set up and support the imaginary play, and then it gets put away and kind of easily tucked away. You can do that. I mean, I put all of these different examples here because these are the kinds of things that often can come up for math. I'll just give one more example. With the math, you could add not only some games or some puzzles, but you might just take things like egg cartons or ice cube trays and materials that children can sort, like buttons, bottle tops, or different things that they can sort. Even just, my goodness, sorting, you can do that with laundry, right? As they're those everyday activities, they're sorting with you. How do we sort the different things by color or by type? But you can also, just like I said, take the ice cube trays and have children sort by size or by color or make patterns. So, and these can again be put in these learning bins. So they're easy to pull out, play with, put back. You teach them that responsibility of putting things away, and you tuck them, into a cabinet or under the bed or something. So I'll stop there. There's so much we could go on and talk about, but the big ideas is that play is learning. You're your child's most important play partner, and we are excited. Thank you for being here, and we would just love to, we'll stay here for a few minutes, right? If you have any questions or if you want to tell us any stories about what's going on for with your tinker boxes, we'd love to hear from you.
Yes, definitely. And I do want to remind everybody that we have 2 more parent nights this year. One is February 28th, and the next one is May 20th, I think. I hope I have that right. Yeah, or May 22nd, excuse me. And then, of course, our parent orientation for next year's is May 8th, but we hope you can join us for those as well. But I would love if anybody'd like to share how any experiences you've had with the tinker boxes, or if you have any questions for Dr. Nicholson or myself, and we'd be more than happy to talk, or just something to share.
Maybe one thing I would ask is, did anything that you hear tonight, did it reinforce what you're already doing at home and give you that kind of thumbs up, keep going? um, or was there anything that okay, so Uma gave it a thumbs up. Was there anything that left you kind of thinking it provoked your thinking? It was a little different, or something you're taking away that you want to kind of ponder for a minute?
Hey, well, as she said, we're happy to stay on if anybody does have any questions. If not, I would like to thank you very much for coming and joining us tonight. We really enjoy this time with you. Um, as you know, we have amazing TK teachers across our district, and we just love having your children with us every day. So thank you for that gift to us. And we wish you a really great night. We'll stay on here for a few minutes. Thank you, Dr. Nicholson, for all of that wonderful information and sharing with us tonight. So much appreciated.